In the heart of Prince Harry's lifelong struggle lies the burden of being known as the Spare. Living in the shadow of his elder brother, Prince William has filled his days with a sense of always being second, a role that has left him feeling wounded and, at times, driven by a need to strike back at every slight. For many, being born into royalty seems like winning life's biggest prize. Imagine attending the very best schools, wandering through magnificent palaces, and having every wish attended to by a team of helpers. Sounds like a dream childhood, right? Yet Harry tells a different story. Being only next in line rather than first, a fate he bitterly calls the Spare, has left him with a taste that is anything but sweet. From early on, Harry learned that his future was not to wear the crown but to stand by his older brother, supporting William as he took on the duties of a sovereign. In his candid memoir, he paints a picture of simmering resentment. I was the shadow, the support, the plan B. I was brought into the world in case something happened to Willie. I was summoned to provide backup, distraction, diversion, and if necessary, a spare part. Kidney, perhaps. Blood transfusion. Speck of bone marrow. This harsh reality was built into his life by the order of birth, a force that weighed far heavier on his family than on most others. Even in nursery, the young royals were treated differently, their worth measured by their birth order. Living as the second choice took its toll on Harry, a pressure that eventually exploded in his sharp 2023 book, Spare, which spares no criticism of his brother and the royal circle. Longtime royal observer Ingrid Seward, who has followed the family for 40 years, believes that letting the Spare label rule his life caused all his emotional struggles, so much so that he turned it into a career. He chooses to be the victim and wreak vengeance on the slights he thought he had suffered, on his family, on the press, and through the courts, she says. Meanwhile, an editor from a well-known magazine dismissed Harry's account as completely untrue, suggesting it was just a matter of how he chose to see himself. Seward, now 77, has seen it all, from family feuds and scandals to dramatic breakaways, and she was often invited for cozy chats at Kensington Palace or found herself on snowy Swiss slopes with the royals. Having watched the boys grow into men, she is in no doubt about why Harry could never truly be happy with his role. Yet, being the Spare wasn't all gloom. It also granted him a certain freedom. While his older brother bore the heavy weight of royal duty, Harry was free to enjoy a life filled with luxury and playful mischief. He often acted like the class clown, standing behind guests to pull silly faces just to make William laugh during important meetings. At 9, he boldly declared to his brother, "You're going to be king, it doesn't matter what I do." In fact, as Seward noted in her recent book My Mother and I, Harry took this as a green light to do almost whatever he pleased. Even as a child, he showed a knack for mimicry, often ignoring the importance of the person he was imitating, and perhaps driven by a constant need for his mother's attention. He always felt the need to compete with William, a task made even harder by his brother's academic success. Diana worried that people might see her younger son as thick because he never showed a real hunger for learning or sat down with a book. Even with the best schooling money could buy at Eton, Harry struggled with exams, and his housemaster admitted that university just wasn't for him. In Spare, Harry confessed that his poor memory was a way to dodge the pain after his mother's death, saying, "I didn't want to fix it, because memory equaled grief." In contrast, Prince William excelled both in school and at university. Instead of finding comfort in books, Harry threw himself into a life of parties and wild nights, even admitting that his unhappiness led him to try cocaine at just 17. As he grew older, whispers among the palace staff began to spread. Why couldn't he just be happy with his cushy, playboy life? Royal writer Tom Quinn, in his new book Yes Ma'am, The Secret Life of Royal Servants, recalled how senior aides once told Harry he was in a much better spot than his brother, explaining that William would never escape the relentless glare of the media once he became king. Yet, according to one source, Harry found it hard to see any silver lining. Matters worsened when he married Meghan in May 2018. Once again, the Spare label seemed to work against him. Royal historian Robert Lacey noted that Harry suffered a certain cruelty from the family simply because of his role. In a 2020 interview, Lacey explained that aides began to edge out Harry and Meghan, feeling they took too much attention away from the senior royals. The British royal system can be very cruel, and it's particularly cruel to the spare, Lacey said, adding that in his teens, Harry realized he was set up as nothing more than the court jester, the number two. Over the years, his discontent grew, especially as it became clear that William and his wife Kate were being groomed for the throne while Harry remained in the background. When Spare was released in January 2023, it didn't take long for royal fans to notice the bitter rivalry between the brothers. Many tales in the book seemed aimed at lowering his brother's standing, including a striking claim that William had once pushed him into a dog bowl. But as history shows, royal siblings have long clashed. Consider King Edward VIII's brother, Bertie, the gentle, stuttering man who never wanted the crown, who ended up forever estranged after ignoring pleas not to abdicate. And then there were George III's unruly sons, who fought like stray dogs, though none ever penned their grievances in a memoir. Spare also casts blame on his father, Charles. At one point, Harry criticizes the king's cold nature, writing, "Pa and I mostly coexisted. He had trouble communicating, trouble listening, trouble being intimate face-to-face. On occasion, after a long multi-course dinner, I'd walk upstairs and find a letter on my pillow. The letter would say how proud he was of me for something I'd done or accomplished. I'd smile, place it under my pillow, but also wonder why he hasn't said this moments ago, while seated directly across from me." For Harry, the royal way of life has left him with what he calls generational trauma. Seward believes Harry became so caught up in the Spare identity that he even compared himself to his Aunt Margaret, a woman well known for resenting her role as the younger sister, though she never said she wished things had been different. Once, Princess Margaret remarked, "I have never suffered from second daughteritis. But I did mind forever being cast as the younger sister." Her displeasure was so clear during their father's 1937 coronation, when she threw a fit over her gown's train being a bit shorter than her sister's. Though Harry barely knew her, it struck him deeply, as he later wrote, that they might have been friends. It seems that in every royal generation, those labeled as spares have a hard time carving out a real sense of self when they're always seen as just a backup. This constant pressure built up in Harry, fueling anger and frustration that weighed heavily on the family when plans were made for him and Meghan to step back from senior royal duties. Under the final deal, Harry and Meghan kept their Sussex titles but lost the style of Royal Highness. Now, living in California, Harry appears more at ease with his new life, although whispers hint that he might be scheming a return to the royal scene. When the king faced cancer treatment last summer, some reports even said that Harry had sought advice from old aides on how to stage a comeback from exile. But that plan seems to have fizzled, as he remains far from the royal center. Even though many fear that the bond between the brothers is broken for good, recently the Duke has shown fewer signs of bitterness. To the relief of his family, he chose not to update his heated memoir Spare for its paperback release on October 24th, and he skipped any interviews to promote it. Yet one must wonder, if Harry ever dreams of rejoining royal life, will he have to finally accept that his place will always be that of the Spare?